Titanic is probably one of the most iconic films of all time. After the release of the 3D version in 2012, it became the second film to gross more than $2 billion worldwide. Though despite its popularity, not everyone is aware of an incident that occurred on set one night, the perpetrator of which remains unknown to this day. There were quite a few unlucky occurrences on the set of the Titanic. Kate Winslet suffered pneumonia after refusing to wear a wetsuit under her dress when filming the water scenes. She also nearly drowned when her coat got caught on a gate and pulled her into the water. Many of the cast members came down with colds, flu, and kidney infections after spending hours in the cold water. Several extras were injured during filming for the sinking scenes. Injuries included a broken ankle, cracked ribs, a fractured cheekbone, and a ruptured spleen. And then there was the spiked chowder. At around midnight on the 8th of August 1996, on the last day of filming in Nova Scotia before moving to Mexico, the cast and crew members took a quick break from filming to enjoy a catered meal. 60 to 80 people, the reports differ, opted for the chowder, including director James Cameron and actor Bill Paxton. Many went back for second and third helpings. They would soon come to regret that decision. Around half an hour later, they realised something was wrong. Everyone was starting to get confused and began struggling with their work. Cameron recalled feeling unwell and made himself throw up, fearing that the shellfish may have contained paralytic neurotoxin. When he returned to the set, everyone had left. Little did he know that they'd all gathered outside vomiting, all feeling the need to laugh and cry at the same time. Luckily for Cameron, it seemed that him forcing the chowder up so quickly at least somewhat lessened the effect on him compared to others, though he did note feeling distinctly woozy. Bill Paxton wasn't so quick thinking and later stated, "Some people were laughing, some were crying, some were throwing up. One minute I felt okay, the next minute I felt so goddamn anxious I wanted to breathe in a paper bag." Most people who had eaten the chowder were quickly taken to the nearest hospital for treatment. Paxton, however, managed to cure himself with a crate of beer. Marilyn McAvoy, an artist on the set of Titanic, told Vice what happened at the hospital. "They did not know what to do with us. It became pretty chaotic. Eventually we all got put into these cubicles with these curtains around us, but no one wanted to stay in their cubicles. Everyone was out in the aisles and jumping into other people's cubicles. People had a lot of energy. Some were in wheelchairs flying down the hallways. I mean, everyone was high." James Cameron remembers sitting there bleeding and laughing after the insane moment that a crew member stabbed him in the face with a pen. Initially, like Cameron, the hospital believed that the cast and crew members had come into contact with paralytic shellfish neurotoxin and were experiencing food poisoning. However, a toxicology report from the Halifax Police Department revealed this was not the case. It turned out everyone had been high on phencyclidine, or PCP, which the chowder had been spiked with. If you've ever watched It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, PCP is the drug that's at least partly responsible for the downfall of Matthew Mara, later known as Rickety Cricket. But on a serious note, PCP is a dangerous drug. It causes hallucinations, distorted perceptions of sounds, and increasingly violent behaviour. As well as being potentially highly addictive, adverse effects include seizures, convulsions, coma, and an increased risk of suicide. Thankfully, none of the cast or crew was seriously injured or killed in this incident, though it must have been a very scary experience. So who spiked the chowder? Despite the Halifax Police Department investigating this for 2.5 years, to this day still no one knows who is responsible. There are a few theories, however. It does seem obvious that one of the chefs might have been responsible, as they were the ones preparing the food, though none of them seem to have an obvious motive for doing so. It also cost them all their jobs, so it wouldn't have been a smart move on their part. I'd be interested to know who, apart from the chefs, may have had contact with the food prior to it being served, I can't seem to find any information on this at all. Were the chefs in the kitchen the whole time, or was the chowder left unoccupied at all? Cameron believes it was a disgruntled production member who had recently been fired. He told Vanity Fair, "We had fired a crew member the day before because they were creating trouble with the caterers, so we believed the poisoning was this idiot's plan to get back at the caterers, whom of course we promptly fired the next day, so it worked." I'm not really sure how he could have spiked chowder prepared the day after he was fired, though I'm guessing Cameron thought there was a way it could have been done. Assuming the caterers had nothing to do with this, it's such a shame that they lost their jobs over it. I wonder why they were even fired if Cameron had another suspect in mind, unless he just blamed them for allowing it to happen. But without the timeline of events that could only be revealed by the culprit, it's impossible to say whether they could have prevented it happening anyway. Another theory is that it was one of the crew members. It does seem likely that if it wasn't the chefs, then it must have been one of the crew members. I'm not sure if anyone else would have been around the food when it was prepared. I'm maybe wrongly assuming not. I just don't know why any of the cast or crew would do this though. They would have to have had some sort of grudge against everyone else, or were just targeting one person and didn't really care who else was affected. Cameron wasn't liked by some people on set. He was known as being temperamental and difficult to work with. Kate Winslet even later stated, after filming, that she wouldn't work with him again unless she was paid a lot of money. Due to his unpopularity, Cameron could have been a possible target. There's still holes in the theory of the target being one specific person though. Whoever was responsible would have to have been sure that the target would eat the chowder specifically, as I don't think any of the other food was spiked. I'm not sure if the rest of the food was tested, but as far as I'm aware, no one who avoided the chowder had any kind of reaction like that. There's also the possibility that it was a prank, although obviously no one's owned up to it since. It would be a very stupid and immoral thing to do as a joke, as the drug has serious side effects on anyone, but if someone was taking medication that could have reacted badly with the drug, it could have been fatal. However, the catering company's CEO, Earl Scott, believes this theory, stating to Entertainment Weekly at the time, "It was the Hollywood crowd bringing in the psychedelics. I don't think it was purposely done to hurt somebody. It was done like a party thing that got carried away." It has been suggested that a rival studio could have tried to sabotage the production of Titanic. It's an interesting conspiracy theory, but I don't think it's anything beyond that. Drugging people obviously carries huge consequences. The rival studio would probably have been more likely to sabotage themselves if they were caught. And apparently it was predicted that the Titanic would flop, so it would seem kind of pointless to even try and sabotage this film specifically. The only person who had an obvious motive was the crew member that was fired the day before, though I'm still not sure how he'd managed to spike chowder that was prepared the day after he was fired, though he is generally considered the main suspect. Then again, just because no one else had an obvious motive doesn't mean there wasn't one. Really, it could have been anyone there that night. You can't even necessarily rule out anyone who ate the chowder, as if the culprit was a user of PCP, they certainly wouldn't be bothered about consuming it themselves. Some people wonder if the spiking was accidental, though I'm not really sure how this could have happened. A lot of people got high. Even if there was a possible situation where the PCP got into the chowder accidentally, it would have to have been quite a significant amount for so many people to have been affected. It doesn't even make sense that anyone would be in possession of PCP on the set. The effects of the drug are apparent, so it's not like anyone could be high while filming without anyone noticing. Assuming it was intentional, I do wonder if whoever was responsible decided to spike the chowder specifically as some sort of petty revenge or something, with hopes it would just be passed off as shellfish poisoning and no one would investigate further. Some of the symptoms of shellfish poisoning are pretty similar to the effects of PCP, such as nausea and vomiting. I think it's also even possible to hallucinate in severe cases, so it's not beyond the realms of possibility this was the case. I wouldn't completely rule out the possibility of it being a prank. I mean, some people do stupid things for a joke. It seems that those affected can look back and laugh now. Both Cameron and Paxton have referred to the event in quite a light-hearted way, though whoever was responsible weren't to know that no one would be seriously injured or killed in this event. It's a rarer side effect, but PCP can absolutely lead to death, whether that be from stopping the lungs from working or from overdosing. As previously mentioned, it can also increase the likelihood of someone committing suicide. While it's possible, it is hard to imagine someone doing something so extreme just for a prank. Surely there's funnier things that could be done that don't risk people's lives and probably get you a jail sentence if you found out. It's hard to say for sure, but it does seem likely that the culprit may have been a user of PCP themselves. They would already know how to acquire it rather than getting someone else involved who could have potentially been a witness to the crime. This would have, hypothetically, narrowed down the suspect list, although at the time they couldn't just drug test everyone as they'd all come back positive. A list of people who used PCP could only be formed on he said, she said. There'd be no way to know definitively. I think the most likely theory is maybe that the guy they fired was responsible. Even though the chowder was prepared the day after he was fired, he could have still spiked the ingredients if they were there the day that he left, which I'm assuming is the case because otherwise I don't know why he'd be Cameron's main suspect. I'm not 100% sure though, I just can't really wrap my head around why anyone would do this, whether it was revenge or a prank. If they had a grudge against one individual, how could they be sure that that individual would eat the chowder specifically? And why do something that would affect everyone else too? I guess it's possible that the culprit deliberately spiked everyone so the target wouldn't be obvious, making it less likely that they'd get found out. It just seems a strange thing to do in general. It almost seems too extreme for a prank, but not extreme or specific enough for a serious act of revenge. Either way, the real culprit remains a mystery to this day. James Cameron even jokingly suggested that Susie Amis, who he later married, was responsible as she avoided the chowder that night. I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.